And welcome to Forum 360, our television program with topics talking about a global outlook and local view for here in Northeast Ohio. On Western Reserve Public Television, PBS channels 45-49. Our host production is Hudson Community Television, Hudson Cable TV, and Rubber City radio stations, where we're heard on various stations here in Northeast Ohio. I'm Bill Steven Saus, your host, and our topic today is an interesting one because it's from a global outlook. We have Krav Maga, which is Hebrew for self-defense and hand-to-hand self-defense. And it was started by a gentleman by the name of Emi Lichtenfeld, who was a chief instructor for the Israeli Defense Forces, beginning way back at the beginning of the State of Israel under David Ben-Gurion, the president of Israel in the early days. Our guest is a local, in a sense, the local view comes to Northeast Ohio with Krav Maga Cleveland. Our guest is Amit Marauganti. He is an instructor, a higher level instructor in what is one of the most fascinating self-defense techniques and internationally Israeli defense techniques. And it has gone from military to civilians. A little bit about Krav Maga. Good to have you on the program.
Nice to be here. Thank you for having me. So Krav is, I guess, compared to the traditional martial arts, such as Chinese martial arts, Japanese martial arts, whatever, it's a little more recent. It was developed in the 30s, 40s by, as you said, Emi Lichtenfeld, a Hungarian Jewish person who, it's a little bit of a story. So he was a boxer and a wrestler and a gymnast. Mm-hmm. So when, as he was growing up, he first started to, he got together a bunch of like-minded fellow boxers, fellow wrestlers to protect the Jewish community in Hungary or Czechoslovakia,
and in Hungary, yes.
In Hungary from the, I guess the anti-Semitic racist gangs that would bother the community. And in the 40s, Lichtenfeld moved out to Palestine, and he said the same thing. He started practicing, and once the State of Israel was formed in 48, he became the chief instructor for the IDF, the newly formed IDF, the chief physical fitness and self-defense instructor, where he started developing this system, the goal of which was to address the immediate threat as efficiently and as quickly as possible. Right?
And this would mean that he would help the military when they were fighting anybody that was taking on, whether it was in the actual wars that they fought with some of the Arab countries, but also just some street fighting. If the IDF was patrolling, let's say Tel Aviv or Haifa or Jerusalem, they would be able to assist in stopping any threats.
Absolutely, yeah, pretty much.
So of course you had the military combat, the IDF, and then Emi Lichtenfeld also taught some more specialized training.
After he retired from the IDF, I guess he kind of modified it to civilian use. Again, the reason being, like we talked about earlier, the expectations, the culture of military and civilian fighting is very different. The military. Again, this is words that I've heard from my other instructors and all. In the military, you don't have to conceal your weapons. You don't have to, you're going in. Your objective is to finish the enemy as soon as possible with deadly force. Right? Something that may not translate to civilian use as well. Like if you have a civilian who's carrying 14 guns on his or her person, that might be a problem for them, right? So, and the access of weapons, again, getting to the weapon, not all civilians carry weapons, right? So it's the same principle, just applied to a different society, different population.
As we look to the global outlook and the local view, many localities, not just in Ohio, but across this country and around the world, are using it for law enforcement officer training and for teacher training, You talked about even your own children, let's say at the JCC, Jewish Center in Beechwood. If there was a threat there, it would be important for the staff to understand how to resolve a threat before even the police get there.
Exactly.
So they might be encouraged to take Krav Maga.
Absolutely. I think if you are in a position which requires, if your job or career is in confined spaces taking care of vulnerable populations, you don't have to be an expert in 10 different systems. You don't even have to be a black belt in Krav or anything else. It's just basic awareness, a few basic principles will help you a lot better than just nothing. Like, for example, you're talking about JCC, and my older son went to the preschool out there. Something similar, and then we have the recent influx of the active killers who just walk into vulnerable places like schools, all that. They're coming and doing some damage, and a lot of times, again, I'm not an expert by any means. Whatever I say here is from the instructors that I've trained with over the years. Is a lot of school rules have you close the doors and sit in the class. Right. Why? You know, if you have an exit, if you have a way of bailing, take those kids or whoever is in there and leave. Right. Yeah.
Make an escape.
Make an escape. If there's a window right there, break it and leave. It depends. It depends on where the attacker is coming through and all that. But basically, if you have an exit, take it, leave. Do not linger there any longer than necessary.
One of the things that Amy Lichtenfeld taught the IDF, the Israeli Defense Force, his mantra was, expect anything could happen on the street. Use your body's natural reflexes. Defend and attack in the minimum time required. Use the body's natural weapons. Exploit the human body. Target your opponent's weakness. Take no defense action. Rather, take the offensive action and avoid injury at all costs. Say, for you and your family or whoever you're trying to protect. How did you get involved in Krav Maga, Amit?
It's been about 8 years since I've been training in Krav Maga and teaching since about 4. I just initially was looking for a way to get away from running. So I was just looking for something else to do, and I came across this school in Cleveland on Middleburg Heights that was offering Krav, and when I went through the website, it looked pretty intriguing, and I decided I'd go there and try it out. So I went there, took an introductory class, and I kind of liked it right away. Signed up for a year straight up. The first day I trained, signed up for a year, and then it just kept going. And after about 3-4 years of training, the owner of that school, she asked me if I would be interested in becoming an instructor. I had no idea then that I could be one, but somehow I passed the search, and here I am.
Excellent. So now you are with Krav Maga Cleveland. That is your own training center.
Training center, yes.
And for self-defense and fitness. How do you start out? What is if you said to a student soon to be a practitioner of Krav Maga, what would you start? Obviously you would do what Amy Lichtenfeld just said, some of those principles, but how would you start people off?
First thing I tell students whenever they come in for the intro class, and if I'm doing it or some of our other instructors are teaching that class, is be aware. I mean, we've heard that phrase, prevention is better than the cure, for ages now. Same thing applies to self-defense. Be aware of your surroundings. Every time I see somebody do this, completely oblivious to their surroundings, it kind of drives me a little nuts. Right. Not because I'm saying be paranoid, be looking over your shoulder at all times. Just be general awareness of your surroundings can tremendously help you in gauging a situation and reacting early enough that you can leave without having to fight yourself out of it.
So have a good mindset.
Absolutely. Do not put yourself in a negative situation if you can help it. Right?
So look for ways of improving your situation.
Exactly. It's situational awareness, positional awareness, all that matters. Because again, if you're walking down the street, being aware of it also projects an error. Look, people who attack, people who target civilians for whatever harm, violence they want to perpetrate, are looking for signs of distraction. You're in here. If you're walking around looking straight, kind of being aware of your surroundings, you're probably not worth that trouble, because they don't want to attract attention to themselves, for one thing. And it also shows that you're aware. They don't want to engage you. But if you're completely oblivious, recently one of my, I guess, friend of a friend was mugged in one of the streets, because this was at like late in the night. I guess he was going to the parking lot to get his car to drive back home or something. It was on the phone or whatever crap he was doing, and he ended up getting mugged. And his phone and wallet were taken away from him. He wasn't seriously injured, was just shaken up a little bit. But just the idea that it could have been worse than it ended up being. Maybe he was lucky. But again, I'm not saying it would have being aware would have completely eliminated the problem, but it could have given him at least a little leeway in observing as to, okay, something is wrong, maybe I need to leave, maybe I need to change my location, go somewhere else.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Good.
So that kind of thing applies more than fighting is violent. The type of self-defense we're trying to teach is not two drunk idiots at a bar egging each other on, trying to push for a fight. We're talking real violence, and it is fast, it is explosive, it is dynamic, it is hard, it is dangerous.
Now you are also teaching, if necessary, if somebody confronts you or one of your colleagues with a knife or a gun, you are trying to teach your students how to isolate that situation, how to basically neutralize that situation, correct?
Yes, I mean, weapons training doesn't come till higher into the system, which has been structured, not because, again, this is my opinion, belts and all that, at least in what we're trying to do, they don't really matter according to me. But it has been given, just to give it a little bit of a structure, a progressive curriculum.
So you start out with a white belt.
You start off with a white belt or a level 1, where you're introduced to your basic movement, basic stance, basic strikes, a couple of self-defenses against common attacks such as chokes, and then you move on when students have to test when they're ready, and if they pass that test, they move into the next level, level 2 and beyond, where more and more variables are added. Like now sparring, maybe 2-on-1, multiple attackers with weapons. Somebody, you're trying to fight somebody comes and throws you on the ground. So it's kind of blended in.
Very good. We have our guest, Amit Marauganti. He is with the Krav Maga Cleveland. This is Forum 360 on Western Reserve Public Television, PBS 45 and 49, and Hudson Community Television. And you can hear us on Rubber City radio stations here in Northeast Ohio. I'm your host, Bill Steven Saus. And we're talking about the Israeli defense system called Krav Maga, which is Hebrew for
contact combat.
Founded by Amy Lichtenfeld, as we said earlier, who came from, he was born in Budapest, Hungary, and his father moved the family to Slovakia. His father was actually a detective and they trained other police officers in Bratislava, which is one of the largest cities in Slovakia. And as Amit Marauganti mentioned, about 1940, the Nazi regimes were starting to affect the anti-Semitism in Europe, and so he and others left to go to Israel.
Or Palestine.
Well, Palestine at the time. And he was noted as a trainer, as well as since he was a boxer and internationally accepted as a fight specialist, and also in good health and workout, he trained the Israeli Defense Force. Getting back to that, let me quote this. This is a quote from the founder, Amy Lichtenfeld, and maybe Amit, our guest and our instructor, can express his opinion about this. Mr. Lichtenfeld said, the fundamental motives of Krav Maga are don't get hurt, be humble, conduct yourself with dignity, reach proficiency so that you won't have to take lives. The first thing that a practitioner must do is to attempt to avoid the confrontation. If he is attacked, he must respond with a minimum of equal force and with a minimum of equal impact in order to neutralize the threat, extract himself from danger. A quote from Amy Lichtenfeld. So give us your opinion of that and how you try to teach that
Okay.
at Krav Maga Cleveland.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you. I
That
both
philosophy.
agree as well as disagree with that with that
Something
comment.
he said,
I
yeah.
agree that you have to address that threat with the minimum of impact that is being wrought onto you.
Right.
Right. But don't get hurt. It's a good goal to have. Absolutely. I would not want to get hurt in a self-defense situation.
Right.
But sometimes it's not my choice.
It's inevitable.
It might be inevitable, especially if since you brought up weapons earlier. If somebody's coming at you with a gun, if somebody is coming at you with a knife, do I want to get stabbed and slashed? No. Or shot? No, absolutely not. But you have to be prepared for the eventuality that you may be stabbed / shot, maybe once, maybe multiple times.
Wow.
It's just how well you want to address it. It's great to expect not, if you train with the expectation of, oh, I'm never going to get hurt, I'm just going to dominate this person and leave unscathed.
Right.
It's kind of, you're living in a bubble. I mean, again, the violence, like I said, we're not trying to address a local drunken, even though that might escalate into a different level of violence.
Right.
But typical street violence, or any violence for that matter, is very, very dangerous.
Right.
Somebody's not coming at you with this big telegraphing punch, or somebody's not going to come up to you and grab you. It's something happened to cause that. Whether it was you who was responsible for the other person, doesn't matter, right? So if you can address that, first of all, awareness. Second, try to de-escalate the situation, try to diffuse the situation.
Very good.
Third, if that doesn't happen, hit first. We teach our students to hit first, because I don't know what the other person knows. I don't want to be in a position, if I can help it, I don't want to be in a position to have to block something coming at my head first, because I have no idea. He could be a much better fighter or whatever else than I am. So,
And if nothing else, the fitness aspect of Krav Maga, obviously when you are a Israeli soldier, the men and women have to take basic Krav Maga, and then as they move up, but they become fit. The self-defense training makes them fit. At Krav Maga Cleveland, what are some of the ways you get people ready and get them fit, and fit to fight, fit to participate?
yeah, it's funny you mentioned Fit to Fight, because they're the organization we're affiliated with.
That you taught, that
Fit
taught
to
you?
Fight. No, that I learned
got
at
involved
another
with-
school called Fight Fit in Middleburg Heights
Yeah, right.
before I
Right.
took over this location and
Very
renamed
good.
it Krav Maga
Very
Cleveland. But fitness is an important part of fighting, because again, fighting, even for those people have this expectation. Some of the students I was asked recently, we pose a question sometimes. How long do you think a self-defense situation is like? I don't like the idea of a street fight. I don't like the phrase "in the streets."
Right.
I prefer self-defense situation, right? That kind of situation, when we asked how long do you think something like this would last, people had all kinds of answers from 40 seconds to 3 minutes.
I see.
3 minutes, somebody's dead.
Right.
Fights, the kind of fights that I'm talking about, last for seconds, 15, 20, maybe 30 seconds.
Right.
So it's rapid, it's violent, your goal is to move, finish, and leave. Right? The longer you stay in that situation, the more variables the more difficult it becomes, the more variables get added onto the equation, and then it just gets more and more difficult. So if you can avoid doing that altogether by hitting this person first, if you know that this person cannot be talked down to, if you know the situation can be de-escalated, you're much better served in striking first and leaving.
And I can see
Yeah.
people in dark parking decks, big cities, or even in a rural area
Yep.
where they're a small town and they stop for gasoline or something, that
Yeah.
they don't know the people in that area, and you can see potential problems. So just having the skills and the
Exactly.
training
And the fitness, of
will
course.
give you a chance to defend yourself or your family or your friends. We're talking about some of the things that come up in class. You were talking about a student studying the art Krav Maga self-defense system who was talking about what do we like to have a blindfolded situation. Now, what did you respond? How did you explain that? What did he actually tell you? What did he-
It's actually this. We recently talked about it a few weeks ago, and then just last week there was a new student who came to our school and he signed up, which was good. But his question was, he had been at another class or a seminar or something, or maybe saw a video on YouTube and all, where the practitioner was blindfolded, dumped in. He had a bunch of people wail on him. Now, I don't know how hard they hit him or her. And then this student was expected to fight his way out of that situation. I'd rather focus on not being blindfolded in the first place.
Right.
Because once I'm blindfolded, unless you spend a lot of time training blindfolded, unless you spend a lot of time being pummeled before you start fighting, you're not going to react that way if something really happens. It's the same thing. You can't expect somebody to get in a car and straight off drive. It's a progression. You start, you get in, you learn the rules, traffic rules, all that. Then you get in, you drive in the parking lot, you go to the local roads, you go to the freeway, and then all that. So similarly, unless you've spent time practicing that, it's not going to happen right off the bat. So same thing with this. If you ended up in a situation where you're blindfolded, you messed up the 20 different steps that happened before you were blindfolded.
Right.
Now, you may end up being blindfolded anyway, but I'm going to fight like hell to prevent that.
Right.
So it's just, again, once I'm blindfolded, my eyesight is gone. So I don't know how many people are around me, and even if I grab hold of one person, one-on-one maybe, but then again, I'm incapacitated by my eyesight. Maybe my hearing's gone. Now I'm disoriented. And expecting somebody to fight out of that situation, somebody who comes in to train 2, maybe 3 times a week, an hour, 2 hours, do I spend more time in teaching that person how to fight their way out of a blindfold, or do I spend more time in teaching them how not to get into that blindfold?
Right.
I'll take the second option.
So there are some things that you would say, let's not go in that direction. So as a qualified teacher, you're looking for the most excellent choices for your students. And going back to what you think the advantage of training of a military style, the official hand-to-hand combat style of the Israeli Defense Forces to this day, how has that helped your students understand that this is truly a combat, it's not a sport?
Again, I get
it's not a sport.
Yes, there is something to be said. It is not a sport. When Mr. Lichtenfeld started this, developed this system, it was because, again, I agree with that and I disagree as well. It was developed with the concept that sport fighting has rules, is bound by a system of rules and referees, and many of the strikes that we practice are considered, I guess, illegal in sports, like headbutts, eye gouges, punches to the throat, punches to the back of the head.
But it saves lives.
Groin kicks. It does,
saves lives.
But also
by doing
exactly. But when
things.
you're training under resistance. Like, when you have an opponent in level 1, they're not fighting back. They're putting you under some kind of chokeholds. They're trying to hit you in the face. I mean, they're with the pads, of course. And you're trying to, basic training, protect yourself. But as you move up the system, the resistance from your partner starts getting more and more. Now they're starting to fight back. Now you have 2 people on you, which makes, again, a case for sport-oriented fighting, because if you look at professional fighters, whatever discipline they are, boxing, wrestling, jiu-jitsu, MMA, whatever they are working under maximum resistance against an opponent who wants to beat them, choke them, submit them, slam them to the ground, everything. So they're working under real resistance. So it's kind of like the circle where, yes, some of the combatives and some of the defenses we use may not be used for a sporting aspect, but also training with somebody who's training sporting style, like MMA kind of workout style, or sparring with your opponent, rolling with your opponent, clinching up and fighting with your opponent. Again, under control, of course. We're not trying to knock each other out. But it helps you develop a sensitivity as to feeling your partners or your opponent's energy, their momentum going, and you responding to what they're doing, them responding to what you're doing, gives you that sensitivity of the energies that's happening, which will ultimately help you in a fight. Because in a fight, you may start at a distance like we are, but we may also end up close, which is what may happen. You may go to the ground. And if you choose, like, oh no, I'm not looking to train against other people against resistance, it's not going to happen like magic when a situation actually manifests itself.
Now, when Mr. Lichtenfeld retired in the early 60s from the military, from the Israeli Defense Force, he did start civilian training. And he started with some younger people also. I mean, he would take children. And you also do that, correct?
13 and above for
13
now.
and above.
In the future, maybe I will start. I want to start a kids program.
Right.
It's just right now we're a little short of instructors, which we can focus on adults. Maybe in the future, maybe people show up, we can figure it out.
Amit Marauganti, we've really had a good understanding of how this
Please call me Amit.
Amit, how this art moved from Israel all around the world,
Yeah.
and here in the United States. I know you said you were involved in different fitness programs, but the Krav Maga is probably one of the most interesting.
It's fun for me. I like it. I
Appreciate it.
if you want to be a little light about it, it beats running.
Now, if people are more interested in getting more information about this Israeli-based defense system, Krav Maga Cleveland, Warrensville Heights, phone number?
216-255-6573. And the website is www.kravcleveland, K-R-A-V Cleveland. We're on social media, Facebook, I guess. Krav Maga Cleveland.
Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you so much for
on
having
Forum
me.
360.
Yeah. Thank you.
Forum 360 is brought to you with support from Electric Impulse Communications, Kim and Harvey Nelson, Rubber City Radio Group, Acronist.com, Hudson Cable, Medical Mutual of Ohio, Forum 360 supporters, and the Shaw Jewish Community Center of Akron.